In a world where trust is shattered and love is tested, one channel dares to uncover the untold stories of heartbreak and betrayal. Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles, where real-life tales of infidelity are unraveled, secrets exposed, and lives forever changed. Join us as we navigate the complex world of relationships, offering support, understanding, and a place for those who have faced the pain of betrayal. Subscribe to Heartbreak Chronicles now, because every story deserves to be told, and every heartbreak deserves to be heard. Story 1. My wife's sister tried to kiss me and now my wife is spiraling. Help me. Sorry for how long this is, TLDR at the bottom. As the title says, my wife's sister made a pass at me at a recent family gathering and I have no idea what to do. For context, I think my wife Jenna is absolutely gorgeous, but she has some really negative body image issues. This is in large part because of her sister Mary, who is very conventionally attractive, as opposed to Jenna's more unconventional but striking beauty. Mary was a successful model until a couple years ago and now works in the fashion industry. In our early days of dating, when I would tell Jenna she's beautiful, she would always say, "Just wait until you see my sister." When I did finally meet her family, she would randomly press me for weeks to talk about her sister, whether I thought she was more attractive than her, etc. I always told her the truth, that I think Mary is attractive in a boring way, and that I think my wife is much more beautiful and interesting to look at. She wouldn't let it go until I confronted her about how uncomfortable it made me and asked her what was going on. This is when she told me that she always had a chip on her shoulder about her looks because of being compared with her sister growing up. They fell into the classic smart one, pretty one dynamic their whole lives. She also said Mary had a habit of being flirty with all of her exes, and warned me that it would happen to me eventually. She then started sobbing and begging me to not cheat on her with her sister, to which I forcefully said I would never cheat on her with anyone, let alone her sister. I've been crazy about my wife since day one, and there's literally no woman on earth who could come close to her. I honestly didn't believe her about the flirting at first. I assumed it was just an extension of her insecurity, but I was wrong. Whenever we get together with my wife's family, Mary always finds ways to touch me and make little innuendos, comments about me or my body. It's super uncomfortable for everyone, especially my wife, and I've called her out on it before. She'll cool it for a while but eventually start doing it again. It's been 6 years of this, and every time it happens my wife is upset for days and I have to do a lot of reassuring. On to the current problem. A few days ago we were at my MIL's birthday party, and Mary asked me to help her grab some things from the garage. As soon as we walked into the garage, she turned and pressed me up against the door with her whole body and started trying to kiss me. I immediately pushed her off and asked her what the hell she was doing. She started giggling and saying she was just doing what we both have been thinking and kept insisting, "You know you want to." I told her she was out of her mind and ran out of there. I went straight to my wife and told her we were leaving. The whole ride home she was asking me what was wrong. I wasn't sure whether to tell her because I knew how much it was going to hurt, but I also thought Mary would probably try to spin it as me making a move on her, so I knew I had to just say it. I told her everything and she cried the whole way home. For the last several days Mary has been calling and texting my wife doing exactly what I thought she would do, even telling my wife that I said she was the hottest girl I've ever seen, which I had to assure my wife a million times that I did not and would never say, even though she believes my account of the situation. She's been a complete wreck the last several days. She's hardly eating. She pulls away from my touch when I try to hug her or just hold her hand. She says she feels hideous and disgusting and I don't know what to do. This is the lowest I have ever seen her, and it hurts to see how much she's hurting. I have no idea what to do to help her heal from this. Reddit, what should I do? TLDR, my wife's sister tried to kiss me, and this is triggering deep-set body image insecurities for my wife. How do I help her? Update. I got a few requests for updates, so here it is. I first want to thank everyone so much for your advice. It was extremely helpful and gave me a lot to think about. I'm especially thankful for the folks that asked me how I was doing. I realized that I have literally never had a chance to check in with myself after these things happen, and I've actually been holding a lot of frustration and resentment about it all. I've been harassed for years and it has either been brushed off or it's been eclipsed by the impact it has on my wife. I don't blame her for it, but this has been a good lesson in me not burying my feelings for the sake of others, even for her. I also want to clarify a couple of things that came up. Several people asked about how my wife's family feels about all this, and I explained in a comment that her parents are toxic and treat Mary as the golden child. Even though my wife is a freaking neuroscientist, amazingly talented musician, speaks 3 languages fluently and another 2 conversationally, my wife and her family are seriously the only people who don't seem to understand how exceptional she is. I remember meeting one of my wife's family friends and talking to them about her research, and they said, "Oh wow, her parents just told us she works at a university." Whereas my parents literally introduce her as the family genius to everyone. It makes me so damn angry to think about how her asshole family has stolen her shine her whole life. She's literally a Renaissance woman, but all they care about is looks and money. Some folks asked me why I would ever put myself in a situation alone with Mary given everything she's done. I have no good answers for that other than I never thought she would actually try to do anything. That possibility just didn't exist in my head. I realize now that I should have seen this would happen eventually, and that I should have been less concerned with keeping the peace and more concerned with shutting Mary's shit down before it escalated to this point. Hindsight is 20/20. Anyway, onto the update. The night I posted, I told my wife that if she wanted to try to repair her relationship with her sister, I would respect that, but that I don't feel comfortable being around her for the foreseeable future. I said Mary has obviously been deeply jealous of my wife her whole life because she is a hollow, ugly person whose entire value has an expiration date while my wife actually has substance. I said that I think her whole family is toxic and has done nothing but put her down her whole life, but that only she can decide whether she still wants them in her life. I also told my wife that while I don't blame her for her emotional reaction, her insecurity is something that she needs to work on for our relationship to be healthy. What Mary did was sexual assault and she's been sexually harassing me for years, but I have consistently put aside my own feelings about this problem because of how it affects her, and that has prevented me from getting the support that I need, too. I told her that her reaction only serves to punish herself and me for her sister's behavior, and there's no reason to give her that kind of power. I also told her something that a commenter said that really resonated with me. The only people who have ever considered her second best are her and her family. Everyone else sees her for who she really is. She was crying the whole time and agreed that she needed to go to therapy to work on her insecurity. We were able to find a therapist who specializes in body image, self-esteem issues to work with her individually, and we're looking for a couples therapist too. My wife sent a message to her parents and sister that explained exactly what happened and told them she would reach out to them if she ever feels ready to repair their relationship. We blocked all of them everywhere, but Mary has of course been spamming my family and our friends with nonsense, claiming I attacked her, I'm a drug addict, I abuse my wife, all kinds of bullshit that thankfully nobody believes. My wife is still down in the dumps, but I can see that things are getting a little better. She's eating and sleeping more and she's cuddling with me in the mornings again, which is nice. Now I'm planning a surprise getaway for us this weekend. We're going to one of our favorite places and I'm going to wine and dine her and try to make her feel like the goddamn queen she is. I want to thank you all again for your help. You really helped me understand the severity of the problem, and again, thanks for helping me connect with my own feelings about all this. Y'all are the best. TLDR, wife and I are going to therapy. We're going no contact with her family for the foreseeable future. I'm going to woo the hell out of my wife this weekend. Update 2. So I guess my original post got reposted onto TikTok and some other subs here on Reddit, so I've been getting tons of messages asking for updates. It feels like things are mostly settled, and I'm really hoping this will be my final update. First, I want to say that I've gotten so many questions about who Mary is, and I'm just not going to say. Suffice it to say that she's never been a household name famous, but she made a living solely on modeling for about a decade from what I understand, so she must have been popular enough that fashion people might know her. I really don't know how that whole world works, but IMO it doesn't matter how many names you drop, you're not famous if you don't have a Wikipedia page. Also got lots of comments that jokingly called me a simp, and I can't argue with that. I totally am a simp for my wife. She's the coolest. I hope you all find a love that makes you feel this way. Okay, I think that's it. Here is the actual update. My wife loved the getaway weekend. We had a blast, and by the end of it she said she felt like herself again. For a few days after we got back things were really quiet, so we were hopeful that Mary had finally given up, but I felt uneasy about it all. Many of you warned me that Mary would try to interfere with my work, and while I initially dismissed it, I figured I would reach out to my boss just in case. I've been working at the same company for almost 10 years and she's heard me vent about Mary before, so I didn't have to explain too much. My boss just reassured me that she knows my real character and would let me know if Mary tried anything. As you predicted, Mary did try to contact my boss a couple of days later, and the following is a recounting of what my boss told me. Apparently Mary said that I needed to be fired because I was a predator and claimed to have proof that I assaulted her. My boss said that was a very serious accusation to make and asked Mary to explain what proof she had. Mary claimed there was a camera that caught the whole incident, and my boss asked her to send the video. Then Mary got flustered and said the police had it, so my boss asked her to send over a copy of the police report. Then Mary said it had a lot of private information in it, so my boss asked her to redact the private information and send it over. Then Mary said she didn't feel comfortable with that, and my boss told her that she could not take action against an employee based on word of mouth from a stranger. Then Mary shouted at her about victim blaming and hung up. Unfortunately, that was not the end of it. Last Wednesday, Mary somehow sent an email from my personal email account with a dick pic to the entire office. My best guess is that I must have left my email logged in on one of my in-laws' devices. She's definitely not smart enough to actually hack me. And I know this is completely beside the point, but of course she chose the weirdest looking dick I've ever seen. I played team sports all my life, I've seen a lot of dicks, and this was something else. It's honestly kind of funny to think about Mary googling gross penis or something and sifting through hundreds of images to find just the right one. I had to apologize to everyone on staff, and thankfully folks were surprisingly understanding. It's actually been kind of a nice bonding experience with my coworkers. I honestly didn't consider myself to be super well liked in the office, but it feels like everyone has been going out of their way to be kind to me, and it means a lot. Anyway, at this point it was clear we had to escalate things legally. I really wanted to avoid it, but she forced my hand. My wife and I have a lawyer friend who helped us draft a cease and desist letter outlining her continued harassment and the material and emotional damage this is causing us. My wife then sent a message to Mary and my in-laws with a copy of the letter and made it very clear that we would pursue criminal or civil proceedings if her harassment continued. My wife's mom then called her crying and begged her to just let it go and leave Mary alone. My wife calmly explained that Mary is the only person responsible for this whole situation, and that their parents have always enabled her awful behavior. She also said something she later regretted but I think was pretty badass. Mary is going to stick you two in a nursing home and steal your money the minute she has the chance, and you deserve it. After the way her mom reacted, my wife is firmly settled on cutting off her family completely. This happened on Friday, and on Sunday Mary's best frenemy Ann sent my brother a message on Facebook to say Mary is going to leave us alone and to please not sue her. I told my brother not to respond, then just sat and enjoyed the idea that Mary was out there somewhere freaking out about the potential of having to actually face the consequences of her actions. It must be such a strange feeling for her. Since then, we haven't heard a peep from the grapevine. It feels like things are finally starting to go back to normal. My wife is starting therapy next week and will be starting couples therapy in a month or two. She wants to do some work on herself first. She's also taking a short leave from work to rest and recharge. I'm so proud of her for standing up for herself with her family and finally putting her mental health and well-being first. Thanks again to everyone who offered advice. This was a messy situation, but it definitely would have been messier without your help. TLDR, Mary tried to get me fired, so we sent her a cease and desist. Now Mary's running scared. She and my in-laws are out of our lives, and we're doing much better without them. My wife is prioritizing her wellness and I am one proud simp. Final update. I forgot about this account completely until today and logged in to see so many comments and messages asking for an update. It's honestly touching to see how many people care about this situation and want the best for me and my wife. This will be a brief update. I don't want to make this a regular thing, and the original situation has resolved enough that I am hopeful this will be the end of the saga. Mary and my in-laws have pretty much left us alone. My 1049 still tries to contact my wife every now and then, but she's made it clear to her family that if the first words out of their mouths aren't "I'm sorry," she isn't interested in a conversation. As you can see, the past 6 months have made my wife a badass. She has done some amazing work in therapy and her confidence is growing all the time. It's not just with her family, she's more comfortable asserting herself at work, with strangers, with friends, etc. She's even stopped putting up with some of my crap. To be fair, that crap is stuff like my leaving my socks everywhere around the house, but I'm seriously proud of her for telling me to cut it out. I'm becoming a more responsible and supportive partner because she's able to communicate her needs and expectations without feeling guilty about it. And I'm able to communicate things to her without intense emotions fully eclipsing the conversation. I didn't mention this in my earlier posts, but my wife does struggle with rejection sensitivity even outside of her family. Often if I brought up something that I felt needed to change, her emotional reaction to feeling like she did something wrong would be really intense, and instead of dealing with the problem, it would become about regulating her emotions. Now my wife has really good coping tools that allow her to talk about the problem without thinking she is the problem. And the biggest update, she's pregnant. We have a baby girl due in February. I am crapping my pants with excitement. We are going to love her so much and teach her that she is more than her beauty. She's going to have happy parents who love each other and work through issues as a team. The toxic cycle will be broken. Jenna's family doesn't know and she's not sure when she'll tell them, but if she does, there are going to be strong boundaries in place for how they can be a part of our daughter's life. And it'll start with family therapy. For now, she has one set of grandparents that will go to the end of the earth for her, and that's more than enough. My family has been absolutely incredible in their support and they are so excited for us. Things are looking better than they ever have. That's all, folks. Thanks again for your support on this wild journey. TLDR, Mary and in-laws have mostly left us alone. Jenna is a badass now. We're having a baby and soon I'll have 2 queens in my life. Captain Simp, over and out. Story 2. So, my wife, call her M, cheated on me with a friend of mine, call him J for the story's sake. A bit of backstory. We met when I was 22 at another friend's wedding. She was a good friend of the bride and I the groom, and they sat us at that table so we could get together. When I first saw her, I was completely taken back by how beautiful she was, and when she sat down and we began to talk, we found out we had a lot of things in common and we clicked instantly. We talked for a while, ate dinner and took to the dance floor. We danced and drank through the night. We ended up kissing in the middle of the dance floor, and when we pulled away our friends came up to us and asked what was up between us. We just shrugged it off and carried on with our night. We left without exchanging numbers, but about a week later I got a text from her asking me out. I of course said yes, and it turned into a relationship. The relationship was great other than small arguments. We never really fought, and it was never anything really serious. I eventually asked her to marry me about 2 years into dating, and we were married less than a year later. We were married for a little more than a year when it all came crashing down on me. Just before our first anniversary, there were little things that were irritating me. She became more guarded of her phone, girls' nights became more frequent, and our sex life was almost non-existent. I had brought this up on multiple occasions but was brushed off, and that I'm letting my insecurities get to me. She would continue to go on as if what I felt and tried to communicate didn't matter to her, so I became colder and colder. I stopped giving her a goodbye kiss as I left for work, and unless it was something important, we hardly spoke. One night while she slept, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails, and messenger apps and found nothing. And from reading stories on here, I checked her car. I grabbed her keys and looked in her car and found a second phone. I knew in that instant what was going on, but I wanted all the evidence for when I called her out. I didn't want her to say something like it had only happened once or anything stupid like that. I looked through the phone and found only one number I read though every message. I connected the phone to my computer and printed out every message and every photo and spent the night researching divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my at-home office reading bios of lawyers and found one that I liked and emailed him, but as it was a setup, he wasn't in the office. I then wanted to know who the guy was. So I grabbed my phone, typed the number I wanted to call, and pretend I'm Spectrum, because who doesn't have Spectrum, but Jay's contact popped up. It took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together, but when I did, I blew up. I was yelling and cursing in my office, and my wife opened the door to check on me, but when I saw her, I told her to get the F out. She closed the door and went to our room. I had never cursed at my wife or raised my voice above a normal volume. All day I never left my office. I was just silently raging, just glaring at the wall. I called one of my friends and told him I need to go for a drink and asked if he'll come with me. He must have heard something in my voice because he asked if I was okay. I told him I wasn't and I really need to drink. So, without a word, I took all the printouts and left to go to the bar. I arrived first, ordered 4 shots of Jack and a beer. I was on my last shot when my friend arrived and asked what's going on. I told him straight out M's cheating. He gave me sympathy and I asked if he wanted to know with who and told him it was Jay. He became visibly irritated. He was the one that introduced me to Jay and all he could say was I'm sorry over and over. Jay and I were never super close. We wouldn't ask one another to hang out, but if we saw each other at a get-together we were friendly. I told T don't mention this to anyone as I had just found out and I haven't even spoken to M or a lawyer yet. I asked him not to tell his wife, and if she asked what was wrong with me to say I'm having problems at work. He agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night, then I called an Uber and went home around 3 a.m. It was the first time I looked at my phone since I called T, and there were missed calls, a bunch of texts all from him asking me where I was, when I'd be home, and if I was okay. I got home and she was asleep on the couch. I just walked up to our bedroom and went to sleep. I woke up with her in the bed, so I got dressed and left the house. I went to go pick up my car and go to my office and buried myself in work for the day and went back home around 10 p.m. To my surprise, my wife was there to greet me, and she told me she had made me dinner. She asked if I wanted her to heat it up. I told her no and went to bed. She followed soon after asking what's been wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone and that I wanted to sleep. She kept pestering me. Eventually I snapped and yelled, "Stop, I am trying to sleep, go away." The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day, and I confirmed and got ready for my day. I went downstairs to leave, and Em had made breakfast asking to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She started by saying I've been acting differently and going on and on about how I changed, and she wants to know why. I told her work has been stressful and soon it would be all over. I finished up and told her I've got to go. I went to my office and counted down the minutes to go meet the lawyer. When I left, I told my assistant I'm going out to lunch with a client and left. The meeting with the lawyer went well and I handed over all I had gathered on her, and the lawyer had told me, "Well, I'm sorry for all that's going on, but I'm happy you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an at-fault state, so your wife has no claim on most of your money." I told him I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking I've got to divorce her as soon as possible. He asked to keep the evidence, but I told him I'd prefer you to just make copies, as I haven't told my wife I knew yet and I don't want to hear her excuses. He agreed and had his assistant make copies. I asked when she will be served with papers. He told me about 2 weeks. I then thanked him and left. I went home to confront my wife. When I arrived, she wasn't home. So I called her, no answer. Called again, no answer. I texted her, "I don't give a F if you're writing Jay right now, get home, we need to talk." Lo and behold, she calls me not a minute later asking what I was talking about. All I told her was get home now. She arrived about 15 minutes later and I said to her, "Wow, look at that, 15 minutes, that's about the same distance between here and Jay's, isn't it?" She looked at me dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she was just looking at me and I said, "Well, nothing to say." She tried to deny and gaslight me and I let her continue on. She worked herself up and started to insult me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence at first and showed it from the side and said, "Look at this mountain of things I gathered on you." Then I showed her each printout at a time. She then tells me to stop and started to cry. She tried to apologize and tells me she loved me. I said, "Honey, what happened to that energy you had before?" You were so adamant on degrading and insulting me just a minute ago. She tried to hang me and tell me how sorry she is. I put my hand out and told her don't touch me. She says, well, go to the bedroom and do whatever I like. I looked her deep in her eyes and told her, sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. I'm divorcing you now. Get a bag, gather your clothes, and get the F out of my house. That was 3 days ago, and I haven't heard from her. I'm sorry about how long this is and if there are any spelling errors. I'm curious about where I'm at and what I can expect from here. Thank you for reading. Story 3. My wife's affair. Seriously messed up. Throwaway since my main account anonymity is probs compromised. I somewhat recently found out that my wife of 5 years and partner of 13 years was having a months-long emotional and physical affair with another man of similar age. Currently, we are in minimal contact and I anticipate she will be served with divorce papers sometime this week. I have no interest in reconciliation, but let me describe what happened and where I am now. We have been married for 5 years, partnered since our late teens, and we are both basically each other's first everything. First serious relationship, first sexual partners, first loves, etc., even hoping to start a family in the near future. I deeply trusted my wife and never ever thought she would do as much as hold hands with another man. So, imagine the shock when I found out that her cheating went full-blown nuclear. I noticed that her behavior was off for the past several months. New hairstyles, makeup, new clothes, dressing more provocatively, a new friend group, posting thirst trap pics on Instagram. Also routinely stayed out late with friends or sleepovers with female friends because she would be too drunk to drive herself home on a random Tuesday night. This was happening routinely for several months, multiple times a week. I was so emotionally exhausted due to my career that I did not have the energy to put the pieces together. I was in survival mode. On a couple of occasions, I somewhat lightly asked her if she was cheating, and she brushed it off. Well, a few weeks ago we were hanging out watching TV and she was vigorously texting on her phone all night. Something finally seemed too off to me. She had a unique text tone for someone she was texting, which was odd. Note, I had never ever gone through her phone throughout our whole relationship, so my degree of suspicion was very high. When she went to the bathroom, I searched her phone with the word sex and many iMessage texts came up with this guy, a P. She was returning from the restroom, so I put back her phone and tried to act cool until she went to bed, at which point I searched thoroughly through her phone to find out she was having a 4-month-long emotional and physical affair with AP. Before I got her phone back, I texted AP from her phone to tell him that she is married. IDK if they are still a thing and don't really gaff. Now all the puzzle pieces of her odd behavior are coming together. Reading through their texts, I see that in the past 3 months she had met up with this guy at least 15 minutes 20 times to hang out and have sex. Sometimes staying at his house overnight to cuddle. All the while, when she would tell me she was with her female friends, she was with him. When she told me she was with her family, she was with him. When she was staying late at work, she was with him. She even went on a weekend vacation with this guy where they stayed in a fancy hotel together, for which she had lied and said she was having a girls' weekend. In some pics I saw she was not wearing her wedding ring, and I suspect the AP didn't know she was married. I don't even know how she met this guy. My wife flawlessly executed the appearance of a single woman through a second life, at least until she got caught and exposed. She lied and deceived me so many times about everything, her location, who she was with, what she was doing. I trusted this woman more than anyone in the world and she broke me in the worst imaginable way. This would hurt less if she had just physically died rather than betrayed me in this manner. While their text messages likely detail just the tip of the iceberg of what they had done together, the text messages they sent were so sexually obscene. She says how she loves it when he comes inside her, she is obsessed with sex with him, loves his big D, wants to go to a sex shop with him, loves deep throat him, yada yada. She did derogatory sexual acts with him that she would never do with me. Trust me, there are much more explicit things, but I won't go there. And yes, I quickly exposed to her family what she had done, sparing the most explicit items for the sake of decency. She was having unprotected sex with him. She is not on birth control. She risked exposing me to STDs. Worst of all, she did this over a dozen times, clearly without remorse. She practically constantly begged to hang out with him, leaving behind her chump husband of 5 years to take care of the house, career, bills, etc. while she had wild romps with AP while high and or drunk with him. WTH was she thinking, because she clearly wasn't caring about me or the marriage. Painfully, she would do these sexual acts to then return home to me, sleep with me, kiss me, and pretend to love me, all the while freshly contaminated by him. I will say that perhaps my recent behavior likely contributed to her poor decisions. She is a very insecure person and I was in general emotionally unavailable due to the demands of my career. I was purely and routinely exhausted and had little emotional energy to offer the relationship. The stress of my career also killed my libido and she was often turned away, which is probably extra damaging to an insecure woman. And if we did have sex, it was vanilla, but I didn't mind that because at this point in my life I have a lot of stressors and sex was not a high priority for me, sadly. Therefore, and in her words, she sought attention elsewhere as she had felt sad, lonely, and insecure and sought validation. BS. You are not justified despite the excuses. Clearly, she was already over the relationship, seeing how easy it was for her to have an affair, lie relentlessly to me, and allow another man to pleasure her while leaving me in her back pocket. She also heavily financially abused me as I paid all the bills and she spent her income on herself and her fling. I am a chump lol. Back to D-Day, I recorded all the evidence on her phone and kicked her out of the house. She stayed with a friend until I ultimately decided to leave town to be closer to family, where I am now halfway across the country away from her. I've taken a leave of absence from work due to the emotional turmoil. Am doing all the right things. I have not seen or spoken with my STBXW since D-Day and we have barely communicated over text. In our limited conversations, she did state that she was extremely sorry, hates herself for how she hurt me in our marriage, her actions were horrendous and wants to do anything and everything to make the marriage work. Says that she loves me more than anything and cannot live life without me. Again, BS. In her texts, she told AP she was falling for him and wanted a committed relationship, although he repeatedly told her that he had always only wanted a casual relationship. When he wouldn't give her the attention she wanted, she would lie to him saying that she was going on dates with other guys just to make him jealous. Honestly, if AP wanted a relationship with her, I think she would have left me and the marriage altogether for him. When I called her out on her words and actions, she turned to gaslighting and victim offender switching. Given the extent of her infidelity and lying, I can never trust her or love her in the same way again, so I am proceeding rapidly with divorce. What is especially hard, since I am no contact, is not having closure on the who, what, when, where, why and how. I crave closure through answers, although I doubt she would tell the whole truth anyway. I most likely will just have to live with that and the consequences of her actions. She is a seriously effed up person and needs more therapy than she could ever afford at this point. And she is now free to go screw whoever she wants and have wild risky sex be. See, she means nothing to me anymore. I wouldn't touch her nether regions with a 10-foot pole. Enjoy being served, wifey. Sorry for the long post, but the past month of my life has been a living hell and I am at rock bottom with nowhere else to go but up. Thankful for whatever blessings I have in my life ATM. I am surprised I wasn't institutionalized at some point in this ordeal, but now I'm doing significantly better. Thanks for reading. TLDR, my partner of 13 years, wife of 5 years, blindsided and betrayed me with her months-long second life with an emotional plus physical affair. Now filing for divorce. Struggling with not having closure but sticking with NC. Mostly struggling with the betrayal but doing therapy, and the only thing that can help me is time.